Welcome to another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. Ramadan Mubarak. I am so happy to be joined today with Sister Lobna Mulla. She is the National Tarbiyah Director of the Muslim American Society. She is a screenwriter and she is the wife and mother of 4. I am thrilled to have her in studio with us today to discuss Ramadan. So let's jump in. Welcome.
Thank you.
So happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I want to start by asking you about Ramadan and how we as Muslims can utilize Ramadan mentally, spiritually, all the wonderful aspects of it from your view.
Yeah, thank you. Ramadan is so special. I really look at it like a special training month, not only in terms of withholding from food and trying to withhold ourselves, from being angry, trying to be more patient. Even just that practice of self-control, I feel like we can really use it throughout the year. Later, when we find ourselves, we have to skip a meal because we're running around like, we can do it because we did it in Ramadan. Or you find yourself in a tense situation and you feel like, I can do this. We did this in Ramadan. That's one of the beautiful takeaways. But on top of that, it's a great time when you're hungry and there's 5 hours left or 8 hours before you're about to eat. And then, it's just an amazing opportunity to turn to Allah. Mm-hmm. You start to think, why am I so hungry? It's because I'm doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An opportunity to get closer by, reading more Quran, by praying. For some, maybe learning about certain aspects of the religion that they didn't know about. So it's just an amazing opportunity to get closer to our Creator and to really, kind of test the boundaries that we maybe never have tested before. And I think every year, honestly, sometimes I feel like there's one little nugget that we'll improve upon year after year. Maybe not incrementally in the same area, but we can kind of always look back and say, this year, this Ramadan, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, which I didn't do last year.
And I like that, right? Because you suggesting it that way, the incremental, aspect allows for less pressure, I think, for people to take mentally, at least, some pressure off themselves to think that they don't have to do all of it at once. It reminds me of something my husband has said a million times, which is that, Islam is a marathon, not a sprint. And, hearing you say that just, I think is very comforting and allowing for the development of that it's not a sprint and more of a marathon, and it's okay if you don't pray Taraweeh every night or you don't the time to do everything, but at least if you're progressing every year in some way, you feel that growth. I mean, maybe that's the main thing I hear you saying. If you feel some growth, then there's success, right?
Definitely. And being a mother, and you mentioned your mother of 4, and I had 2 sets of kids kind of very close together. So many years would go by before I could really have this very peaceful, you see pictures of people in Ramadan, they're sitting on the prayer mat and they're just holding the Quran and it's so heavenly. But the reality, I'm talking over a decade of not having that beautiful picture. I'm really glad you mentioned that because a lot of times we do feel guilty. There's so many things going on in our lives. Some of us maybe are taking care of an elderly a family member who's sick, or some of us are working 2 jobs, or we have young children. Whatever the situation may be, it's not this ideal situation where we feel like so spiritually high all the time. And it took me many years to kind of come to that comforting, to come to a place where, there's a little bit more peace in my life where I can maybe enjoy certain aspects that I didn't before. But I had to come to terms a while back and say, you know what? I'm not able to pray Taraweeh in the masjid. I'm not able to finish the entire Quran. And I'm being very honest. People think like, oh yeah, we make 2 or 3, we finished the Quran 2 or 3 times. I didn't. But I said, I'm going to make the most out of it. And I'm going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward me for taking care of my family, for waking up everybody for suhoor. That's my superpower. I'm super, chipper in the morning and I can, make suhoor. I can provide that for everyone. And to do the best that I can. So I think it's important to address that fact that not all of us are able to maybe do all of the things that we want to during Ramadan, but we do our best. And then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward us for what we can do.
And I really appreciate that too, when you're talking about the suhoor, right? Because we take for granted, or I think many times in families, whoever's doing the cooking, whether it's mom or dad, that they're doing that. And that in and of itself is a great contribution to the family, to the growth of the family, to the centeredness, family centeredness. And that is a good time to bring back to remembrance that, hey, this, mom or dad, whichever it is doing this for us.
Yes.
I mean, that is something in and of itself. And perhaps the hunger that one feels from the fasting can allow for that remembrance or that mindfulness around that whole process, right? From beginning to end, where you make the food, you eat the food,
Yes.
Who's doing that, who's contributing to that,
Yeah.
and being grateful for that, not just the food itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That whole process.
Yeah, I really appreciate you because, there are a lot of mothers with young kids who don't get the opportunities to connect the way that others do.
Yeah.
And we are going to return to this question of connection
Sure.
a little bit later, but it's an important one. We touched on this a bit, but I want to see, do you have any other things you would like to talk about in terms of the benefits of Ramadan as you see them?
Some of the other benefits maybe that I didn't mention before is really being able to appreciate what you have.
Mm-hmm.
One of my mentors put it really nicely, when we say when you're hungry, you can perhaps get a glimpse into the life of somebody who doesn't have much.
Mm-hmm.
But the big difference here is you're going to eat at 8 o'clock. For us here on the West Coast, we know we're going to eat. Whereas for those who are struggling financially, who are poor or who are refugees, they don't know when they're going to get their next meal. But it gives us a glimpse. It's like, what a blessing that we have that we wake up in safety.
Right.
That that we're not in a war-torn country at the moment, and that we're blessed with not only this guidance of Islam, which is a huge blessing, but we're blessed with these amenities like having food and water and knowing that we're going to have it. So that heightened awareness of the blessings that we have in this month, not only those tangible ones like food and water, but also intangible like safety, and also the blessing of guidance. Mm-hmm. Truly to be, we're delving more into the Quran. We're even if we're listening to it,
mm-hmm.
Or we're reading it, or we're following it in the prayers and Taraweeh. What a blessing to know who God is and how He wants us to live.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and discuss some practical aspects of Ramadan. What advice do you give those who are working during Ramadan feeling guilty that they can't attend all of the extra gatherings such as Taraweeh and special iftars? How can they frame for themselves the fact that they do have to work and they can't do that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think the best way to frame it is that working to provide for your family, that is worship as well. Mm-hmm. That's a good deed. If you're busy because you're taking care of other individuals and that's why you can't leave, or you're studying or in the middle of a program, it's like, hey, it happened to fall in Ramadan. What can you do? You can be like, no, I'm not going to finish my studies. Realize that those efforts are forms of worship. Learning, working, preparing for your family, taking care of loved ones. Those are all acts that you can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward you for. And those are all praiseworthy acts. So thinking, I'm not in the masjid right now, but I'm doing something that's godly. I'm doing something for the sake of Allah. I think that's important. And secondly, what can you do in your downtime while you're driving to work? Can you listen to Quran? Can you listen to a lecture? Can you be remembering Allah more than can you learn a new dua? Mm-hmm. What are some of those things that you can do? And I think just squeezing in those activities when we can, I think is great, and to be happy.
So at this time, we'd like to take a break for our sponsors, and then we'll return right back. Thank you. Welcome back to Muslims and Mental Health. Again, we are joined today by Sister Lobna Mulla. She is the National Tarbiyah Director of Muslim American Society. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I'd like to continue on now talking about another aspect of what we've been talking about in terms of connection, and just what advice would you give people who cannot fast for legitimate reasons during this month to be able to stay connected to both the community, the overall month of Ramadan, because there is a lot of sentiment out there where people feel disconnected and don't feel like they can be a part, whether it's that they're pregnant or they have a medical condition that doesn't allow them to fast, or even people who are on their break, during the month. How do you advise them to have that connection and be fully involved in Ramadan?
That's a great question, because I think there's some aspects of my life where I felt that as well. So that hits home. And I think we kind of touched upon it a little bit. There's so many aspects to kind of some of the feeling of Ramadan. There's the night prayer, there's the morning breakfast suhoor, there's the breaking of the fast, there's that whole span in the middle of the day where you feel those aches and pains. But if you're not, still turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, still turning in remembrance of Him, but then being engaged in those other aspects that are communal, whether it's like family breakfast time, or it's dinner time, or maybe that you are able to go to the night prayers even though you're not fasting. And maybe for some people they're not able because they have little children, or for whatever reason they're not able to stay the entire. But just making that effort to go to the masjid, if somebody can, that's wonderful.
Because there are other things they can do in the masjid, right? So there's setting up things.
Yes.
There's cooking. So maybe you can't fast, but you can cook for somebody who's not fasting, or who is
great
fasting.
Reward. Yeah.
Or even, I think one group of people who are often forgotten, right, are the imams, and cook for the imam and his family, right? Set up a spread at the masjid for them, because they're often overlooked or forgotten, and they work so hard, right?
Yeah. Help out with babysitting.
Babysitting, right?
What a great thing to foster. Having little children have great memories of Ramadan. My kids will remember a couple of times when there was a program at the masjid and they were able to go to childcare, and they're running around, they're having a great time. All of that just adds, that's another way that we can contribute. Set that up or be a part of it. Helping in cleanup.
Right, and then feeding people that are needy, or it's another time, throughout the year, other groups of people help the homeless, right?
Yes.
This is one time a year that we can do that as well. It's a great reminder.
It's a great reminder.
Yeah.
Reach out to your neighbors and let them know why you're getting up at odd hours of the night, or if you're leaving. Make little Ramadan packets, cookies or an ethnic food or whatever that you would like to share. Dates with a little note. Happy Ramadan, we're fasting, and just wanted to share these with you. It's a great way to reach out.
I like that a lot. Even inviting them maybe to an iftar, and then you can explain the same at iftar at your home with your neighbors.
Yes.
Yeah. So I also want to ask you about the Night of Power. Many people have uncertainty or confusion around the Night of Power.
Yeah.
And I just want to, both for our non-Muslim audience and our Muslim audience, maybe have you explain what it is, and then how people can benefit from the Night of Power.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. The Night of Power is when the Quran was revealed in its entirety, and there was other amazing things that happened in Ramadan, but one of the greatest is the revelation of the Quran. And going back to the surah, when the chapter of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the Night of Power, Laylatul Qadr, literally translated as the Night of Power. And he describes that it is better than 1,000 months. I just did this calculation with my son before we came. 1,000 months, that translates to about 83 years.
Wow.
Or 82 years. So
a lifespan.
A lifespan in one night. And I was talking about it just before I came. So we'll step back a little bit. So there's through hadiths, through sayings of the Prophet, that it's in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, and most likely in the last 10 odd nights, the odd nights of Ramadan. And there's even some sayings that points to perhaps maybe the 27th night being. But really, like you said, there's uncertainty. But what is certain is that night of worship, prayer, reading Quran, remembering Allah, making dua for yourself and for others, right? Supplicating and praying to Allah and for others, giving in charity, whatever good deeds or acts of worship that are being done, that night is worth a lifetime's worth of worship. So it's wonderful because, again, it gives us a push to increase that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to really dig deep in those last 10 nights when you're getting tired by then.
Yeah. And I like that uncertainty that you mentioned, right? Because what if you're one of those people that on the 27th night, which actually still even goes by calculate, like, right, by the side
Exactly.
of the moon. So
how do you
maybe
know?
it might be the 27th night here in America and not the 27th
Does Allah
night
give us
somewhere
two?
else, right? They're two, like, right. So do that uncertainty allowing for people feeling like they didn't miss out. Maybe it is still possible that it wasn't that particular night, right? Or that it was that one of the nights of the last 10 days, but so that there isn't this exclusive and inclusive.
Right, all or nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great motivation, and it makes me think how merciful and generous is Allah. That there's so many opportunities throughout the year, and then this one is like the big bonus in Ramadan about being worth the worship of 1,000 months. He's so generous. So I mean, it's a great opportunity to look for.
Well, I appreciate your generosity and coming to talk with us during Ramadan. We're both fasting right now, and that's very generous on your part.
It's my pleasure.
And I want to switch gears now to going into our fun questions that we like to ask. And particularly, since this is your first time on the show,
Okay.
I would like to ask you who your favorite Muslim hero is and why.
Wow, my favorite Muslim hero.
If you have one.
Yeah. I would have to say Malcolm X. In high school, I don't remember how I stumbled upon the book. It wasn't an assignment, which is, I love to read. And reading his life story, and for the first time, honestly, getting a glimpse into a revert's life. That was number one. And then the amazing struggle and, the amazing person that he is, learning about him was really an eye-opener for me, and an eye-opener, and it was very inspiring. So I would say Malcolm X.
Alhamdulillah. And what is your favorite Islamic concept?
My favorite Islamic concept is that of Allah's mercy. It's just amazing that Rahma. It's like, obviously, with sincerity, with sincere intention of wanting to come back, but you can never do so wrong. You can never go so far that you can't come back. I mean, it's amazing. You can never really be in despair. There's no reason for you to be in despair.
That's such an important message, too, because I think a lot of our youth tend to think that they can't.
Exactly. And really, at any age, you find yourself getting stuck sometimes, and nope, I've gone too far. It's been so long. But Allah's there waiting.
Yeah, so I also, given that, by profession you're a screenwriter, and I want to tap into that a little bit and ask you about your favorite type of cultural production. What would that be?
I would say, growing up, I loved watching musicals. And my favorite one is Sound of Music.
Oh,
That's my favorite. Yeah.
On the mountaintop.
Yeah, on the mountaintop. It combines my love of music and camping, nature, and family. It's beautiful. I love that story.
Well, you kind of covered the other questions I would ask you, which was which genre and what was the name of your favorite, which it sounds like you said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to having you back and discussing more topics. So this concludes another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. We wish everyone a blessed Ramadan and pray that all of your prayers are accepted. Please join us again for another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. You can reach us on nafshealertherapy@gmail.com for any comments, questions, or concerns. Or you can join our adjunctive website at www.nafshealertherapy.wordpress.com for other materials that may be useful to you. I would also like to urge you at this time to become a subscriber of our YouTube channel. We are hoping to reach 1,000 by the end of Ramadan. We're currently just above 750, so it's not much further to go. But please join us as a subscriber on YouTube. It's very helpful to the show. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, and assalamu alaikum.